Unfortunately, she could not make it here today due to last-minute circumstances, so I'm just going to go ahead and present her paper for you.
Dr. Zhang is a visiting assistant professor of art history at Scripps College in Claremont, California. Her research interests include modern Chinese art and architecture, East Asian interregional art history, and diasporic art and architecture, with a focus on the interplay of spatial practices and visual culture in transcultural contexts from the 18th through the 20th centuries. So here is her paper, Picturing the Other in America, 19th Century Anti-Chinese Advertising and Images of Chinese Laundrymen. In 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed in the United States, which prohibited Chinese workers from immigrating and denied citizenship to Chinese nationals already in the country. Against this historical background and within the social context of the time, this paper examines the history and impact of designed representations of Chinese immigrants in shaping the political views of white Americans during the late 19th century. In tracing the history of image making of the Chinese in American visual culture, I encountered a series of images and representations focusing on a particular group of Chinese, the laundry workers. I found that this occupation not only reflected an important aspect of Chinese immigrant history, but also contributed to the construction of the ethnic image of Chinese people in American society. These two threads, the history and the image making, intertwined together. On the one hand, during the 19th century, most prevalent occupations for recently immigrated Chinese men was working as laundrymen. And on the other hand, the image of the laundryman became an ethnic symbol for Chinese people in popular culture. Therefore, I believe that these images offer an entryway through which we can explore this early period of history and further consider how the diasporic experiences shape contemporary American art and culture. So I got ahead of myself here. In this paper, I first illustrate the history of Chinese exclusion and anti-Chinese advertising in the late 19th century, articulating the formation of the stereotypical image of Chinese laundrymen in American advertisement designs. In addition, the paper examines how these deliberately crafted images resonated with different white readerships and framed their identity as superior to that of Chinese immigrants. During the mid-19th century, the discovery of gold in California sparked a significant wave of Chinese immigration as many arrived in the United States seeking new opportunities. Following the gold mining, these early Chinese immigrants found work in industries such as agriculture, railroads, and small business that required a large supply of affordable labor, and often in jobs considered undesirable by white workers. As time passed, hand laundries emerged as a major occupation for Chinese immigrants, largely because it allowed Chinese workers to be self-employed. It required minimal startup capital and did not demand proficiency in English. By the 1880s, Chinese-run laundries had become a dominant presence in this business across the American West. The image of laundry workers therefore became an ethnic symbol and stereotype for the Chinese, which were frequently featured in the 19th century advertisements for household products like clothing, starch, soap, and detergent. The popularity of these depictions, on the one hand, stemmed from a fascination with the exotic foreign spectacle from the Far East, while on the other hand, from the prevailing anti-Chinese sentiment of the time, which deemed the Chinese as aliens within American society. Sentiments toward Chinese immigrants became extremely hostile in the 1870s and 80s, as Chinese workers engaged in the laundry business, which was laborious and time-consuming work at such low cost. Both middle-class and working-class white men began to perceive them as a threat to their own jobs and to society. Additionally, in the United States, the task of hand washing and ironing had traditionally been associated with domestic servants, primarily women. So in this sense, this mixed, complicated anti-Chinese sentiment was fueled not only by racism, but also by sexist views, as Chinese laundrymen were seen as occupying an inferior position in American society and the economy due to their association with a traditionally female occupation. The economic recession of the time further exacerbated this hostility, eventually leading to the passing of the Chinese Exclusion Act in May 1882 and its extension law known as the Geary Act in 1892. These laws prohibited Chinese workers from immigrating and denied citizenship to the nationals already in the country. An 1892 rally poster from Seattle, Washington, served as a striking example of the overt and violent anti-Chinese sentiment. Here, the bold capitalized font, along with the large exclamation marks accompanying the phrase, "Chinese, no, no, no," bluntly demonstrated the strong determination among white Americans to expel the Chinese from Washington state. This anti-Chinese sentiment was also evident in the designs of the late 19th century advertising trade cards. One such example is the 1890s Off for China trade card, which highlighted the theme of sending Chinese out of the country. The advertisement itself didn't clearly indicate the products being sold, and the image resembled contemporaneous political caricatures. The audience's attention was captured by the large sail, which seemed like a white flag of surrender and boldly displayed the words, "Off for China." Similarly, in an 1882 newspaper illustration titled "A Last Load," a political caricature featured a marked road sign with the rallying cry, "No more dumping loud." This cartoon was published at the time when the first federal law excluding Chinese immigrants was enacted. It reflected the increasingly hostile attitude toward Chinese people in contemporary politics. In the caricature, a ship is shown dumping its last load of cargo, symbolizing the influx of Chinese immigrants. These figures were identified by their Manchu-style robes and queues, which had become iconic features associated with Chinese ethnic identity during the late 19th century. The figures were deliberately miniaturized with mask-like faces and awkwardly contorted bodies that created a sense of distortion. Their cues were exaggeratedly depicted as standing straight up, portraying the Chinese laborers as soulless puppets. In contrast, the towering white man shown in the foreground holds a stick bearing the words "anti-Chinese" in a threatening manner. This imagery symbolized a desire for control and manipulation over Chinese figures, which further emphasized the power dynamics and the hostile climate toward the Chinese population. Similarly, the image of Chinese laundrymen depicted in the Off for China card was heightened by their dark-colored, straight-up cues, their purposefully miniaturized sizes, and their exaggerated, slanted eyes. However, in contrast to the newspaper caricature, the trade card pictures served a dual purpose. It not only functioned as a cartoon reflecting the political climate and social commentary of the time, but also as an advertisement promoting celluloid cuffs and collars. Advertising trade cards like this were a prevalent marketing tool in America during the mid and late 19th century. These trade cards typically measured around 2 by 6 inches and were often distributed for free in stores and on the streets. They utilized colorful and caricaturized pictures to advertise new products, especially clothing and cleaning products. This was made possible by industrial inventions like the celluloid material. Moreover, with the aid of new printing technology, such as chromolithography, Thousands of advertising trade card designs were fashioned in America between the 1870s and 1900s, many of which featured images of the Chinese stereotypes. Late 19th century trade cards from the Celluloid Company exploited the themes of Chinese exclusion and stereotypes, focusing on the imagery of excluding Chinese laundrymen. A range of depicted motifs contributed to constructing these stereotypical images, including caricatured, puppet-like Chinese figures, wash tubs, hangers, and irons that symbolize the tools of the laundry trade. Compared to the political cartoon that depicted a ship unloading the last cargo of Chinese immigrants, these advertisements emphasize how celluloid collars and cuffs successfully sent Chinese laundrymen back to China. In the image, 3 white men, each twice the size of the Chinese figures, emerge from the water, intimidatingly bidding farewell to the Chinese laundrymen. These white men are dressed in white shirts, wear smirking expressions, and sport red pants, creating a sharp contrast with the Chinese laundrymen. The illustration was intended to advertise the waterproof nature of celluloid articles, as that was the primary reason why American customers deemed Chinese hand laundry services useless. The use of bright colors in the trade cards further reinforced the notion of Chinese laundrymen as the visible yellowness other. In this context, advertising American products not only aimed to appeal to white customers through American technological advancements, but rather it also served as a form of Americanization by rejecting the other. This narrative of excluding Chinese laundrymen was virtually manifested in other celluloid advertising trade cards as well. For instance, one card features Lady Columbia pointing to a rallying cry on the wall that reads, "No more Chinese cheap labor." Celluloid cuffs, collars, and bosoms. The image depicted a set of elements that referenced the mentioned Chinese cheap labor, including a distraught laundryman sitting on an upturned wash tub, a fallen box of starch on the floor, and a flat iron placed behind him. Lady Columbia and Uncle Sam, both personifications of the country of America, were dressed in the red, white, and blue Star-Spangled Banner, smiling while holding a shield that reads, "Invention." This imagery served as a reminder to customers that it was the American industrial inventions eliminating unnecessary others that protected the country. Cards like this not only deny the economic power and contributions the Chinese had made to the American economy in the late 19th century, but also portray them as an economic threat. Another trade card from the 1880s promoting steam washers employed similar symbolism. In this image, the country of America and its technological inventions were embodied in a figure adorned in red striped trousers with a machine-like head and crank-like arms, advertising the Missouri steam washer. This figure is shown actively chasing a Chinese person out of San Francisco, while in contrast, the Chinese character represented the stereotypical image of a laundryman, with a straight-up queue at the back of his head, holding a bag of money and a washboard. Instead of the distraught or sad expression in the cards that I just showed, this figure wore a distorted and malevolent look. The slogan, "The Chinese must go," below the image was a direct quote from Dennis Kearney, the leader of the Working Man's Party, who used this rallying cry in his speeches against Chinese laborers. Once again, the design of the trade card highlighted the close relationship between political satire and commercial advertising. Here, the washer manufacturer and trade card illustrators aim to promote domestic products by magnifying a household problem into a national crisis. The depicted background of the trade card further emphasized this metaphor. The landscapes behind the advanced American washing machine, marked with the word San Francisco, showcased an industrialized cityscape filled with manufacturing buildings and chimneys. This created a stark contrast with the depiction of China, toward which the Chinese laundryman was running, which appeared as a riverscape characterized by natural settings like trees and with pavilions. These culturally loaded, contrasting images conveyed a clear message to their white readers: a modernized America versus an outdated, pre-modern China, to which these laundrymen were expected to return. In this sense, the image of the laundrymen symbolized not only cheap labor and immigrants from China, but also the country of China itself. In a similar vein, an 1886 poster promoted laundry products manufactured by the George D. Magic Washer Company in Illinois synthesized anti-Chinese political sentiment with racist imagery of Chinese laundrymen in its advertising. The poster depicted Uncle Sam holding a proclamation in one hand and a can of the company's new detergent in the other, while he was kicking a group of Chinese laundrymen with their wash tub off a cliff. These Chinese men are portrayed with grotesquely distorted faces and long pigtails standing upright, desperately running toward a ship in the distance labeled "For China." A smirking sun radiates in the background, and the slogan, "The Chinese must go," is prominently displayed at the bottom. Alongside Uncle Sam, a line of text reads, "Don't use this if you want to be dirty," metaphorically equating the Chinese with dirt that needed to be cleaned away by the Magic Washer product. Below the image, the advertisement states, "We have no use for them since we got this wonderful washer. What a blessing to tired mothers. It costs so little, and don't injure the clothes." Here the poster targeted a specific audience, white middle-class American mothers and wives who were responsible for housekeeping and childcare in the late 19th century. They're seen as potential customers for these household products, anti-Chinese advertising images, and the small trade cards themselves. In this sense, the potential readership and clientele of women also differentiated the advertising trade cards from those made from those late 19th century political cartoons. The latter portrayed Chinese laundrymen as geopolitical others and threats to American society and economy. However, these trade cards specifically targeted white middle-class women, turning the collecting and viewing of these small advertisements into a gendered pastime. They delivered a message that the advanced products not only freed the country from cheap labor, but also liberated women from the tedium of housework. By doing so, the trade cards' portrayals of the must-go Chinese laundrymen infiltrated the domestic sphere with anti-Chinese sentiment to a degree that political cartoons would not reach. In summary, the late 19th century advertising trade cards played a significant role in spreading anti-Chinese sentiment and propagandizing stereotypes, particularly the image of Chinese laundry. These small yet impactful advertisements effectively employed stereotypical and often racist imagery along with political messaging to resonate with specific white middle-class American readers, especially women who were responsible for household tasks and childcare. Through their deliberate use of symbolism, slogans, and visual narratives centered around the theme of excluding Chinese laundrymen, these trade cards served as a powerful testament to the influence of advertising in shaping social perceptions and attitudes toward marginalized groups throughout history. Thank you.